Any employee of Natwest who wants to dispute their dismissal could well cite the case of Dame Alison Rose and ask for something, couldn't they? Well, let's discuss this further with Justin Urquhart-Stewart, who's an economist and chairman of the regional investment platform. Justin, fantastic to have you on the programme. Nigel Farage there, quite rightly, really, saying he's shocked and saddened. We didn't say shocked and saddened. He said it was a sick joke that Dame Alison Rose is getting 2.4 million. It's not really a surprise, though, is it? I think we probably expected she was going to walk away with some sort of golden handshake, a big pension, the amount of shares she's probably got in Natwest. Is it a surprise?
Well, it's not really a surprise because that would necessarily be in the contract. So technically, that's what she'd get. I'd say I don't often get to agree with Nigel Farage over many things, but he's not wrong with this. If you were actually working for a bank and you started disclosing customer information, you'd be out the door in seconds. And the same way as a doctor wouldn't be disclosing your medical conditions to anybody. They'd be immediately struck off. So that's number one. Also, you happen to be the chief executive of the business. What's that message? Particularly when you're then going to talk to a well-known business journalist at the BBC. Are you really going to be stupid enough to disclose this information? It is really ridiculous. However, all is not lost. Because since the last banking crisis, we do tend to go in for some of them. Sir Fred Goodwin, now known as Fred Goodwin, or Fred the Shred as he is called, lost his knighthood and various other benefits. And since then, we've actually had clawback arrangements so that if people are entitled, according to their contract, strict rules, but if they have behaved in a bad way, and one of the key things for behaviour now is actually making sure that people behave in a correct way. Let's get it right. Serious error of judgment and breach of customer confidentiality, those will be in the contract. And if you're not fulfilling those, you will lose that bonus and salary. Not necessarily all of it. Those negotiations will be happening straight away. So she's not going to get away. That's very unlikely. And I suspect she may no longer be a dame.
How much damage did this do to Natwest shares? Someone messaged in the show saying he was a Natwest shareholder, and during this entire furore that shares and the value of the company seemed to plummet somewhat. Has it had a sort of negative financial impact on Natwest?
No, it's had negative impact actually on the banking system in the United Kingdom. It's which is we need to be working well. Actually, normally we're pretty good at financial services. We make a lot of money, pays a lot of tax, and it's good for the country. However, we have scandals like this that does diametrically the opposite. But look what happened. We actually had to bail out NatWest, or RBS as it was at that stage, £46 billion, which in those days was the equivalent to the entire defence budget, round or thereabout. The defence budget on buying a bank, which was effectively bankrupt. Also, at that stage, the shares were buying them, they were getting them at about £5. Now what they would be, £2.68. So as a result of this fantastic era of recovering NatWest, they've halved in value. And you're going to get a bonus for that? In my business, I wouldn't get a bonus. Comes that, I wouldn't get a job.
Could there be more trouble looming for NatWest if people decided, or sort of say, for instance, if Nigel decided to pursue pushing the Information Commissioner's office for a fine on regarding the data breach? Could they be on the hook for further fines?
Well, it's quite possible because the regulator at last is beginning to find that they've actually got some teeth and to be able to go in there. Now, actually, one of the regulators, an ex-head of the regulator, Al Davis, is actually chairman of the bank at the moment. So all the more reason for them to actually have really be upstanding and behaving the right way. Now, he's going to be standing down next year, and it's going to be interesting to see, actually, how many of that board, who are responsible to the shareholders, to the owners, us. Remember, we still own about 38.9%, something like that, to actually make sure our investment is being looked after properly. Well, I don't think it's being looked after properly. It's halved in value, and we've still got more to come, but we'll get some money back, but not what we've put in there at all. So I wouldn't be at all surprised there should be probably a clear out of the board and a real understanding that actually banking is about one word. You have to have confidence in that bank to look after your clients' money and their information responsibly. This is not responsible. And the result of doing that is you're out.
It seems to me as well that, banks seem to be walking from one disaster to the next. They're hardly favourite person in most people's list of people, are they? And yet now we're learning. This is a multifangled issue, isn't it? The whole debanking scandal. Because we're learning, on one hand, there are people who they consider politically exposed people, and they seem to be applying the letter of the law of that piece of legislation designed largely for foreigners who want to launder money through our system and not the niece of someone who once stood for election in Grimsby. They seem to be applying that in a pretty heavy-handed way. But then there's this other element here, which is you can essentially be told you're not having a bank account because you don't have the same fluffy, cuddly, politically correct woke principles that we want to espouse publicly. I mean, surely there needs to be some sort of revolution as we move to a more cashless society. Everyone needs a bank account.
Well, good news is actually there are now more banks to choose from, and banks which are starting up there are much more automated, better facilities, and if they've got any sense, being run responsibly. There's 3 letters at the moment going around the city to actually highlight how we should behave, operating in a way which is environmentally responsible, making sure it's sustainable, and with good governance. And if you can't fulfill those, you shouldn't be there. In fact, you should be fired with enthusiasm. And I think, well, she's already gone. She doesn't need to be fired. She's out the door. But nonetheless, NatWest needs to try and rebuild that confidence, and that will help rebuild, frankly, the rest of the banking system. The trouble is, of course, banking gets mixed up with investment banking as opposed to just domestic, rather dull banking. Good banks should be dull. That's good. You have the responsibility to look after your money. That's a huge privilege to have, and not to be abused. And unfortunately, if we go back to 2008 and the banking crisis then, that showed that they were operating irresponsibly. So if we want to actually now have banks should be standing up saying, we will behave properly, it's still going to be profitable, we still need banks in there, then the way is open for you to do so. And here is the time for banks, particularly NatWest and others, clear out the old guard, bring in new people who understand the technology and how to behave